It was a day that was supposed to showcase cooperation, unity, and leadership in the White House East Room. A rare bipartisan event, meant to bring together leaders from both sides of the aisle. Journalists filled the room, dignitaries and politicians from across the nation stood side by side, and everyone was ready to hear a dialogue that could set the tone for the country's future. But when Donald Trump took the microphone, the carefully crafted atmosphere was shattered in an instant. His words cut through the air, sharp and deliberate. Let's be honest, Barack Obama was never qualified to lead. Not then, not now. The room fell into an uneasy silence. The kind of silence that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Gasps rippled through the audience. It wasn't just the content of the message, but the context. This was a former president, a man who had led the country for 8 years, now being publicly dismissed by the sitting president. The attack came without warning. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't part of the event's planned rhetoric. Trump, as always, thrived on the unpredictable. His words were designed to shock, to provoke, to dominate the moment. And it worked. For a split second, the air in the room was thick with tension, and every eye was now on Barack Obama, sitting less than 10 feet away, calm and composed. It wasn't the response people were expecting. Trump, leaning in, clearly relished in the tension he'd created, daring Obama to respond. But Obama didn't flinch. His posture was impeccable, his expression unwavering, as if he had expected this very moment. His gaze wasn't on Trump, it was on the audience, the world watching. For Obama, leadership had always been about more than just winning arguments, it was about the truth, about responsibility. The room waited. Would Obama snap back with an equally sharp retort? Would he challenge Trump's attack head-on? The world was watching, and the stage was set for a confrontation between two wildly different leadership styles. Trump, who thrived on spectacle, volume, and sharp, cutting words. Obama, who embodied composure, patience, and precision. And now, Obama was about to show the world exactly what leadership looked like. The tension was palpable. As the cameras zoomed in, the room's focus shifted from the sound bites and jabs being thrown to the quiet force that was Barack Obama. He leaned forward, hands resting on the table in front of him. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. Trump, full of energy, attempting to dominate with his words. Obama, calm, measured, waiting for the right moment to speak. And when Obama spoke, his words were sharp, not because of the anger behind them, but because of the clarity. Qualification isn't just about what you say, Obama began, his voice steady and deliberate. It's about what you do when the country depends on you. The words hung in the air, taking root in the minds of everyone in the room. There was no bravado in Obama's voice. He wasn't trying to win a shouting match. He wasn't trying to overpower anyone with volume or emotion. He was speaking facts. Obama continued, when America faced an economic crisis in 2009, we didn't look for someone to blame. We acted. We stabilized the auto industry. When Ebola threatened to spread beyond borders, we didn't wait for a disaster, we built a response team that contained it. With every word, the room seemed to shift further. The earlier tension now turned into quiet anticipation, a collective understanding that something bigger was unfolding. Trump's grin faltered. Obama's delivery wasn't just about defending his legacy, it was about showing what leadership in action looked like. Leadership, Obama said with finality, isn't about showmanship. It's about responsibility. The crowd, which had been uncertain, now leaned in, listening more intently. Obama's calm authority was undeniable. People were no longer waiting to hear more from Trump, they were looking to Obama for the next move. And as Obama spoke, his presence seemed to draw the room closer, the power of his words amplified by his composure. Trump, visibly uncomfortable, shifted in his chair, his posture now defensive. He was used to dominating the room with his larger-than-life personality, with his sharp words that often landed with a bang. But Obama wasn't playing his game. Obama wasn't going to shout louder or match the energy. He was simply speaking the truth, and that truth was resonating with everyone who was paying attention. Trump, who had expected to command the room, was now left reacting to Obama's calm responses, visibly trying to regain the upper hand. But it was clear, the balance had shifted. Obama wasn't just holding his ground, he was changing the conversation. It wasn't about who could yell the loudest, it was about who could deliver the clearest, most composed message. Obama wasn't flustered. He wasn't rattled. He simply let the power of his message do the work. And it was working. You could see it in the faces of the people in the room. The way they leaned in, the way their eyes followed Obama's every word. It wasn't just about political rivalry anymore. It was about something deeper. Leadership. Responsibility. Truth. Trump's usual tactics, his sharp insults, his bluster, his theatrics, weren't enough in this moment. Obama had shifted the dynamic. He had shown, without raising his voice, that leadership isn't about spectacle. It's about substance. It's about what you do, not what you say. Obama's words rang true in the East Room, and the impact was undeniable. The room, once tense and divided, was now fully engaged. The question no longer seemed to be about who would win this exchange. It was about what leadership truly meant. And in that moment, the room was starting to realize that leadership wasn't about shouting over your opponent. It was about standing firm in your convictions, letting your actions speak louder than your words. The battle between spectacle and responsibility was unfolding before their eyes, and Barack Obama was proving that, sometimes, less is more. As Obama's words settled over the room, the energy shifted. Trump, ever the showman, had come into this moment expecting to dominate. But Barack Obama, with his calm demeanor and sharp precision, was stealing the spotlight. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Trump, a man who thrived on spectacle, volume, and controversy, was now left to defend himself against Obama's unflinching resolve. Obama had hit a nerve, and he wasn't done. He wasn't just defending his own legacy, he was setting the stage for something far more significant, a public demonstration of what leadership actually looked like. In the East Room, there was no escaping the palpable tension in the air. Trump, visibly frustrated, leaned forward. His fists were clenched, his face flushed with the need to reassert control. He was used to being the one who commanded the room, the one who could cut through his opponents with sharp jabs and unrelenting aggression. But Obama wasn't rattled. He wasn't flustered. His poise and calmness were like a force field, and they were proving to be far more powerful than Trump's fiery retorts. As Trump interjected, trying to derail Obama's message with a classic jab, Obama didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in, his voice unwavering and confident. "Mr. President," Obama began, "real action isn't about building walls. It's about building trust. It's about making decisions that may not be popular but are necessary for the good of the country." The words hung in the air, cutting through Trump's rhetoric with surgical precision. Obama wasn't just throwing back insults, he was challenging the very foundation of Trump's leadership approach. The crowd could feel it. They could sense the weight of Obama's words. Where Trump had focused on division, on loud proclamations, Obama focused on unity, responsibility, and the long-term vision of what the nation truly needed. As Obama spoke, the audience's reaction was telling. People weren't just listening, they were absorbing. Even those who had initially been skeptical of Obama's approach could feel the strength in his words. Obama wasn't here for drama. He wasn't here to compete in a shouting match. He was here to make a statement about leadership in the 21st century. And as he continued, the room began to shift in his favor. Trump, who had been the center of attention for much of the event, now found himself on the defensive. His attempt to break through Obama's calm delivery with louder and sharper remarks was met with an unsettling silence from the audience. Even his own allies, those who had rallied behind him, seemed to be losing faith. The moment Obama spoke again, it became even clearer, leadership isn't about spectacle. It isn't about the loudest voice or the most dramatic soundbites. It's about steady hands in times of crisis. It's about action when the cameras aren't rolling, when the spotlight is gone, and the country is left to grapple with the consequences of decisions made in the quiet moments of leadership. Obama's voice cut through the tension, each word carrying the weight of experience. When you lead in times of crisis, he said, you understand something very simple. Leadership is about trust, not showmanship. It's about standing firm, even when it's unpopular. He wasn't just addressing Trump now, he was speaking to the entire room. He was speaking to the country. His words were a direct challenge to the way leadership had been redefined over the past few years. In that moment, the audience was divided. Some senators remained seated, arms folded, unwilling to show support for Obama's message. But more and more, the applause began to swell. It was hesitant at first, but as Obama continued, the room warmed to his message. People were starting to see the difference between empty rhetoric and true responsibility. Even Trump's most ardent supporters in the room were beginning to feel the weight of Obama's calm authority. The contrast between the two men couldn't have been clearer. Trump, angry and desperate to regain control, continued his tirade. He lashed out at Obama, claiming that his presidency had been a failure, that he had left the country weaker and more divided. But Obama wasn't fazed. He didn't feel the need to defend himself with the same sharp tone. He simply leaned in, his voice steady and unbroken, as if the noise surrounding him didn't matter. When we faced the auto industry collapse, Obama continued, we didn't walk away. We made the tough choices. We made the unpopular decisions, and we saved those jobs. We saved those communities. And today, they are still standing because of that leadership. His words hung in the air, not just as a defense of his presidency, but as a quiet reminder to the room and to the audience watching at home that true leadership doesn't involve pandering to public opinion. It doesn't involve looking for the easiest way out. It involves doing what's right, even when it's hard. Obama's calmness became a magnet, drawing people in, pulling them away from the noise and spectacle of Trump's rhetoric. His message was about leadership that didn't seek applause, it was about leadership that sought results, even if those results weren't immediately popular. And as Obama continued to speak, the contrast between the two men became impossible to ignore. Trump, his face reddened and angry, continued to assert his dominance in the room. His words were rapid and sharp, filled with accusations and blame. He pointed at Obama, accusing him of failing to deliver on his promises. He screamed about the economy, about healthcare, about division. But Obama didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to shout louder. Instead, he answered Trump's criticisms with calm, steady responses. Mr. President, Obama said, his voice still even, when you say everybody knows what you're really doing is trying to make a soundbite. When the lights fade, when the slogans disappear, the record remains. And that record is clear. His words, calm and cutting, seemed to silence the room. Trump, who had been trying to dominate with insults and bluster, now found himself at a loss for words. The crowd, once hesitant, had now fully shifted in Obama's favor. It wasn't just about his calm demeanor. It was about his ability to stay grounded, to focus on the real issues, and to hold his ground without resorting to the same tactics that Trump used. And in that moment, the true lesson of leadership became clear. It wasn't about who could yell the loudest or make the most headlines. It was about who could stand firm, with integrity and responsibility, when it counted the most. Obama's message was resonating, and Trump, though still holding the title of president, was losing the room. The weight of Obama's words was starting to land, and the nation, both inside the room and outside, could feel it. The momentum inside the East Room had clearly shifted. Obama's quiet but powerful words had gained the upper hand. Trump, once in control, was now visibly struggling to regain his footing. His usual tactics, loud, bombastic, and filled with personal jabs, weren't landing as they usually did. The crowd, once uncertain, was now drawn to Obama's steadiness, his clarity, and his refusal to be rattled. In the face of Trump's outbursts, Obama remained unfazed, his composure a stark contrast to the growing frustration of the sitting president. The audience could feel the change in energy. They weren't just waiting to hear what Trump would say next. They were now looking to Obama for guidance, for leadership, for a calm response to Trump's increasingly erratic behavior. It was a masterclass in restraint. Trump, realizing he was losing control of the room, shifted tactics. He leaned forward once again, voice raised, eyes locked on Obama, trying to regain the upper hand. "You talk a lot, Barack," Trump sneered. "That's all you do. You talk. But when it comes down to real action, you didn't deliver. Everybody knows it." The room, which had been on the edge of their seats, became even more captivated by Obama's response, or rather, by his lack of response. The former president didn't rush to reply. Instead, he let the silence hang there, giving Trump's words time to resonate, allowing the weight of Trump's accusations to settle in the air. It wasn't awkward, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was deliberate. Obama wasn't flustered. He didn't need to shout or respond in kind. His confidence came from a place of knowing that the truth he spoke would stand on its own. When Obama finally spoke, his voice was low, measured, and cutting. "Real action, Mr. President," he said, his tone calm, "isn't about building walls. It's about building trust. It's about making decisions that may not be popular, but that are necessary for the good of the country." His words hung in the air like a heavy truth, and this time, the applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was resounding. It wasn't forced or hesitant. It was spontaneous, a reaction from the room acknowledging that Obama wasn't just defending himself, he was defending the very essence of leadership. Trump's smirk faltered. His face flushed, not with the usual confidence, but with frustration. He was losing his grip on the narrative. His outbursts were no longer shaking the room. The shift in energy was clear. Obama was winning this exchange, not by overpowering Trump with volume, but by offering a stark contrast to the noise and division that Trump was trying to stir. Obama, without raising his voice, was dismantling Trump's argument piece by piece, not with insults, but with clarity and facts. Trump, still trying to regain his footing, muttered, "You know, I've done more in 3 years than you did in 8. His voice was sharp, defensive. "The economy was the best it's ever been until China sent us their virus. Everybody knows it. We had record highs. Jobs were booming. You failed." The audience shifted uncomfortably, some nodding along with Trump's words, others clearly uncomfortable with the tone. Trump wasn't backing down, but his insistence on using the same old lines, blaming others, pointing fingers, was beginning to wear thin. Obama didn't rush to answer. He didn't need to. He simply waited for the right moment to respond. And when he did, his words were a sharp contrast to Trump's. "Mr. President," Obama said, "when crisis struck, you looked for someone to blame. A virus, an opponent, a headline. But leadership isn't about blame. It's about responsibility." Obama wasn't just talking to Trump anymore. He was addressing the room, the people watching from across the country. It was as if he was reminding everyone what leadership truly meant, the ability to take responsibility, to make the tough decisions, to put the needs of the country ahead of personal gain. Trump, still trying to control the room with his words, began to shout once more. His voice filled the East Room with aggression. "You couldn't even fix Obamacare. You failed the American people. You didn't deliver." The accusations were growing more desperate. He was losing his grasp on the room, but his pride wouldn't let him stop. Obama, however, wasn't finished. His voice remained steady. "You say you've delivered, Mr. President," Obama replied, "but leadership is not measured by sound bites. It's measured by results. When you face a crisis, you don't look for someone to blame. You step up, and you do what's necessary. That's what we did. And that's what leadership is about." The contrast between the two men couldn't have been clearer. Trump, with his defensive posture, his angry gestures, his need to dominate with words. And Obama, with his calm, his precision, his focus on responsibility. Obama wasn't about to get caught up in Trump's game. Instead, he was redefining the conversation. It wasn't about who could shout the loudest, it was about who could lead with integrity, with purpose, and with an unwavering commitment to the American people. The room was now fully captivated by Obama's words. He had managed to not only hold his own against Trump's onslaught but had turned the tables, slowly but surely. The applause came again, this time louder, stronger, a wave of recognition for the message Obama was delivering. Trump tried again, his words more frantic now, desperate to regain control. But Obama wasn't having it. "Mr. President," Obama said, his voice calm but firm, "you can call me weak. You can call me unqualified. But history doesn't bend to slogans. History bends to results. The words hit hard, and the room responded. The applause echoed through the East Room, louder than ever before. It was clear now that the room wasn't with Trump. It was with Obama. Obama's calm demeanor, his ability to stay focused and articulate, had won the room over. He wasn't just defending himself, he was defending a vision of leadership that many had been longing for, leadership rooted in trust, responsibility, and action. As the applause began to die down, Obama sat back in his chair, poised and steady, while Trump gripped the podium, his frustration building. Obama's message had resonated. He had laid out the case for true leadership, and the room had responded, not just with applause, but with respect. The battle was no longer about who could talk the loudest. It was about who could offer the clearest, most honest vision for the future of the country. And in this moment, it was Obama who had won that battle. As the echoes of applause reverberated through the East Room, it became clear to everyone present that the course of the event had dramatically shifted. What had begun as a high-stakes battle of words between two polarizing figures had now transformed into something more significant. It wasn't about politics anymore. It was about leadership. And as Barack Obama continued to speak, his calm words carrying the weight of years of experience, the divide in the room became unmistakable. Those who had once stood by Trump now found themselves questioning the very essence of leadership. Obama had shifted the conversation in ways no one had expected. Trump, who had built his entire political persona on commanding attention with loud, divisive rhetoric, was visibly flustered. His smirk had faded, his posture defensive. As Obama delivered his carefully crafted responses, Trump's usual tactics of intimidation and provocation had lost their power. The cameras captured it all, Trump's flailing attempts to regain control and Obama's unshakable composure. Trump, ever the showman, tried once again to draw the crowd back to his side. He leaned into the microphone, his voice louder now, trying to drown out Obama's message. "You talk a lot about history, Barack, but history doesn't care about your speeches. It cares about results. People want change, not more of the same," Trump snapped, his tone harsh and urgent. The air in the room seemed to thicken. The audience, who had just given Obama a round of applause, now looked on in uneasy silence. Trump's words, which once might have dominated the stage, now hung awkwardly in the air. His anger was palpable, but it was clear that the tide was turning. Obama, with his trademark calmness, didn't respond immediately. He simply let Trump's words linger. His silence was louder than any defense he could have mounted. And then, in his signature style, Obama leaned forward again, ready to reassert his presence. His voice was quiet, measured, but every word carried the weight of undeniable truth. "Mr. President," Obama began, his tone unshaken, "leadership isn't about catering to the loudest voices or chasing headlines. It's about showing up when it matters most. When the world is watching, and the weight of the office is on your shoulders, you don't look for applause. You look for solutions." The words hit the room with the subtlety of a forceful tide. Obama wasn't just talking about policy or past achievements, he was talking about the character required to lead. The room, once caught in Trump's energetic outbursts, now seemed to be leaning toward Obama. People shifted in their seats, exchanging glances, nodding along. It was a powerful moment, one that was beginning to crystallize in the minds of those present. Obama wasn't just answering Trump's attacks. He was redefining leadership in real time. As Obama continued, he spoke of moments that defined his presidency, moments that required him to rise above the noise and focus on what was truly important. When the auto industry was on the brink of collapse, Obama said, his voice calm yet resolute, "We didn't wait for the economy to fix itself. We took action. We saved jobs, we saved families, and we stabilized entire communities. That's what leadership looks like. It's not about grand gestures. It's about the small decisions that ripple through history." The room was still. Even Trump's staunchest allies seemed to have paused. Obama's words weren't just about politics, they were a reminder of the responsibility that comes with the title of president. His actions spoke louder than the noise Trump was trying to create. Trump, visibly agitated, shifted in his seat. He wasn't used to being spoken to in this way. He had built his political empire on his ability to dominate and overpower, but Obama's approach was different. It wasn't about winning with volume, it was about winning with substance. Trump interrupted again, his voice sharp. "You can talk all you want about saving jobs, Barack, but what about the people who didn't get saved? The factories that shut down? The jobs that were lost before you took office? You failed them." His words were pointed, designed to strike at the heart of Obama's legacy. The audience bristled, some looking away, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. But Obama didn't rise to the provocation. Instead, he waited for Trump's words to hang in the air before responding. His voice, once again steady and clear, sliced through the tension. You say I failed them, Obama said, but the truth is that we made hard choices, not easy ones. We didn't let people fall through the cracks. We didn't look for someone to blame. We stepped up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to shout over Trump's outbursts. He simply spoke with a quiet authority that made every word resonate. Leadership, Obama continued, isn't about pointing fingers. It's about picking people up. It's about making the tough decisions that don't make you popular in the moment, but that make the country stronger in the long run. The room, which had been divided moments before, was now unified in its response. The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was loud, genuine, and filled with respect. Trump, who had dominated the conversation with his fiery rhetoric, now found himself isolated, struggling to regain control of the room. His allies in the room tried to clap, but their applause felt forced, almost as if they, too, knew the shift had occurred. Obama's message had landed, and it was clear that the room was with him. It wasn't about personalities or politics anymore. It was about leadership. And in this moment, Obama was leading. He wasn't just defending his legacy, he was offering a vision of leadership that transcended the partisan divide. A vision rooted in responsibility, trust, and action. As the applause settled, Obama sat back in his chair, his composure unwavering. Trump, still fuming, gripped the podium, his frustration palpable. He tried once again to interrupt, but the room was no longer listening to him in the same way. The power had shifted. Obama, who had remained calm throughout, had made his point. And it wasn't just about what he said, it was about how he said it. The crowd, once uncertain, now stood firmly behind him. The moment wasn't just a political exchange, it was a demonstration of the kind of leadership America needed in times of crisis. Obama had shown that leadership isn't about shouting louder. It's about standing firm in the face of adversity, making tough decisions, and leading with dignity. It was clear that, for all of Trump's bluster, Obama had won this round. And with that, the room knew the fight wasn't over, it was only just beginning. As the room settled into a tense silence, the lingering weight of Obama's words seemed to permeate every corner of the East Room. What had started as a high-stakes verbal confrontation between two of the most powerful men in the country had now evolved into a profound reflection on leadership itself. The shift in the room was palpable. Trump, who had once dominated every room with his trademark aggression, was now visibly flustered, while Barack Obama remained calm, composed, and resolute. The contrast in their approaches to leadership couldn't have been clearer. It wasn't just a battle of personalities anymore. It had become a battle of values. Trump, his face flushed with frustration, looked around, clearly searching for any sign of support. His usual tactics, loud, divisive rhetoric, weren't working. The audience, which had initially been on edge, was now leaning toward Obama, not just because of the calm delivery of his message, but because of the substance behind it. Obama wasn't shouting to be heard, he wasn't trying to dominate the room with his personality. He was simply offering something that had been sorely missing in American politics, a steady, grounded approach to leadership. Obama had struck a nerve, and Trump, still reeling, leaned into the microphone again, his voice rising. "I've done more in 3 years than you did in 8, he snapped, his words sharp, filled with frustration. "The economy was the best it's ever been until China sent us their virus. Everybody knows it. We had record highs, jobs were back, and now look at what you've left us with." The room, once divided, seemed to hesitate. The audience could feel the tension, the growing discomfort. Trump was desperately trying to regain control, but it was clear that his usual tactics weren't landing the way they had before. Obama, unwavering and calm, wasn't playing into the spectacle. He wasn't going to let Trump control the narrative with empty boasts. He leaned forward slightly, his voice measured, but every word cutting through the noise. "Mr. President," Obama said, "you're right that the economy is important. But leadership isn't about claiming victories when things go well, it's about taking responsibility when things don't go according to plan. It's about standing firm when the situation is tough, not when it's convenient." The words hit like a sharp counterpoint to Trump's bombastic rhetoric. Obama wasn't dismissing the importance of the economy, he was refocusing the conversation on what leadership truly means. It wasn't about taking credit when things were good, it was about stepping up when things were hard. The audience, which had been silent during Trump's attack, now seemed to lean in, hanging on Obama's every word. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged glances, as if finally realizing the depth of Obama's message. Obama wasn't just answering the criticisms leveled against him. He was challenging everyone in that room to think about leadership in a broader context. It wasn't about personal wins or attacks, it was about making decisions that would benefit the country in the long run, even when it wasn't the popular choice. Trump, frustrated and losing control of the room, shot back. "You failed on healthcare. You didn't fix anything. You left America divided. You let jobs go overseas. That's why I won. That's why people wanted me. His voice was filled with the same sharpness, the same anger that had characterized his entire presidency. But this time, it didn't have the same effect. The room, which had once been split, was now leaning heavily in Obama's favor. The message Obama was delivering was one that resonated with the people in that room and, more importantly, with the people watching from across the country. Obama, unshaken, responded. Leadership isn't about blaming others, Obama said, his voice calm, yet sharp. It's about making decisions, even when they're tough. Even when they're unpopular. It's about bringing people together, not tearing them apart. When you blame others, you create division. When you lead with responsibility, you build unity. The room, which had been tense, now erupted in applause. It wasn't the polite clapping that had come after Obama's earlier remarks. This was different. It was powerful. Genuine. The room, once full of skepticism and doubt, was now showing its approval. Even some of Trump's supporters seemed to be swayed by Obama's message. They may not have agreed with everything Obama had said, but they recognized that the calm, measured way he was responding was something that couldn't be ignored. Trump, still visibly frustrated, shifted in his seat, his face reddened with anger. He was losing control of the room, and he could feel it. His hands gripped the podium, his lips pressed tightly together. He was no longer the center of attention. The energy in the room had shifted entirely in Obama's favor. You can stand up here and talk about leadership all you want, Barack, Trump retorted, his voice growing more frantic. But at the end of the day, it's about results. People want results. They don't care about your speeches. Obama, unfazed, leaned forward again, his voice steady and clear. Results aren't just about the headlines, Mr. President. They're about the people you serve. Leadership isn't about speaking loudly or making empty promises. It's about ensuring that people can trust you to do the right thing, especially when the cameras aren't rolling, when no one is watching. The room, which had once been split, was now united. The applause grew louder, and the energy shifted decisively toward Obama. The contrast between the two men had never been more apparent. Trump, unable to match Obama's composure, tried again to regain control. His voice was louder now, desperate to regain the narrative. You can talk about trust all you want, Trump snapped, but what have you really done? What have you really fixed? Obama, still calm, responded without missing a beat. I did what was necessary, Mr. President. I did what was right, even when it wasn't popular. And I did it because I believed in the American people. The audience responded with a standing ovation. It was spontaneous, powerful, and undeniable. Obama had not only defended his presidency but had also redefined what leadership meant in the modern age. He had shown that leadership wasn't about dominating a room with loud words and fiery rhetoric. It was about making hard decisions, taking responsibility, and putting the people you serve first. Trump, once again, was left on the defensive. His words grew more frantic, but it was clear to everyone in the room that Obama had won. He had captured the moral high ground. The country, both inside the room and across the nation, had seen the contrast between the two men. And it wasn't just about the policies. It was about how each man approached leadership. Obama had demonstrated that true leadership is not measured by how loud you can speak or how many headlines you can grab. It's about steadiness in the face of adversity. It's about taking responsibility, not for the good times, but for the hard times. As the applause finally died down, Obama sat back, calm and composed, his message clear. He had faced down Trump's accusations with grace, and in doing so, had reminded the world that leadership is about more than just spectacle. It's about service. It's about responsibility. And it's about trust. Trump may have still held the title of president, but Obama had seized the moment. The room knew it. The audience knew it. And as the cameras captured the final moments of the event, one thing was undeniable: Obama had delivered a lesson in leadership that would resonate for years to come.